Senator Sifuna.
Again, Waziri, the problem that I have with some of these responses is that they actually don't answer the question that has been asked by the Senator. Speaker, I want to take you to the response to question number, just a minute, question number 28 by Professor Ojienda. And the response at page 5, for instance, when the CS is addressing the question of manufacturing. As you know, I was in Thika just this weekend, and growing up, we knew Thika to be an industrial town. You will see in the response there the CS saying that to revitalize manufacturing, the government is implementing a strategy aimed at lowering the cost of production. And if you go to bullet number 5 there, he talks about improved access to affordable energy and infrastructure for industrial enterprises. Now, Speaker, go to the very next paragraph, paragraph 13, where now we are talking about affordable energy. And the CS says the government has prioritized stabilization. Prioritizing stabilization cannot be what lowers the cost of energy, Honorable Speaker. If you look across the continent of Africa, Kenya has one of the highest rates of cost in terms of the amount it takes for you to buy 1 kilowatt hour. We have one of the highest in the region. We are doing upwards of 33 shillings per kilowatt hour. Compared to our neighbors, Ethiopia is actually doing less than a shilling per kilowatt hour. Tanzania is doing better, 22. Tanzania is doing 12, Uganda 23 shillings, Rwanda is doing 27 shillings. So when you talk about lowering the cost of energy, which is a key ingredient in lowering the cost of production and encouraging manufacturing, our priority cannot be stabilization. And I remember, because I'm a member of the Energy Committee, we fought when we were being told that there was a PPP for Adani to stabilize electricity supply, and they wanted to start in Nairobi. Yet we have over 13 counties that don't even have access to the grid. So Waziri, in terms of specific measures that you are taking to lower the cost of production, and specifically the cost of electricity to match the region, what is your government doing?
Senator Unyonga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And CS John Mbadi, I'm happy this is the first time I've actually been in this house when you've come here ever since the President appointed you. So I wanted to congratulate you for your job. The question I wanted to ask, Mr. Speaker, is that he has raised the issue of the debt stock ratio vis-a-vis the GDP. As the CS is aware, I think the President has announced that the Kenyan government is now going to build an airport costing $2.5 billion US. And I wanted just the CS to either come to the House and tell us, is he willing to give us the data, the information, and the agreements which have been signed, how much in real value this airport is going to cost, who are the beneficiaries of this airport construction, and what are the details? I believe that this House, as the Senate, is entitled to receive that information so that we can tell our Kenyan people, because we don't want another Adani to be what we are fighting about in our republic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a quick one on the response to question number 29, part C. CS, allow me to say I'm happy to hear that you are developing a mechanism to be able to link debt to development outcomes. The question that I am asking, Mr. Speaker, is if that mechanism does not exist today, with the trillions of shillings that we are borrowing almost on a monthly basis, how is Treasury able to measure the impact of the money borrowed so far, if, in the words of the CS, a mechanism is now being developed for future use. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and at least the CS has finally appeared before this Senate, Mr. Speaker. Mine is a quick one. Waziri, through the Speaker, of these 12.84 trillion Kenya shillings, I have seen you have indicated domestic debt will be is 7.06 trillion Kenya shillings. External debt is 5.79 trillion shillings. Mr. Waziri, what is the total debt that the President Uhuru Kenyatta borrowed between 2013 and 2022? So that we don't lump under President William Ruto that there is imagination that President William Ruto has borrowed 12.8 trillion. So how much was borrowed by President Uhuru Kenyatta's government from 2013 to 2022? And what is the impact that was borrowed in terms that can be attached to projects, including SGR, among others? Waziri, can you shed light on that? I thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a serious question. Why is Wambua
Thank
laughing?
you, Senator Cherargei. Senator Abbas.
Thank you.
Order, senators. Cherargei, take your seat. Take your seat,
Order.
Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mine is actually a concern that from response of the Waziri, some of the interventions actually outlined is agriculture and forestry and fishing. But of course, a larger economy that is actually been driven by the livestock sector, where 10 million people are surviving on, has not been mentioned. So what is the position that why is it that the focus is only agriculture, also the agriculture remains the backbone? And then you see provision of subsidies of fertilizers, seeds, expansion of rehabilitation of irrigation, promotion of climate resilience, support of agro-processing, nothing on livestock. What is the position?
Thank you, Senator. Cabinet Secretary, you may respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think Senator Jenda has left, but I would not have any problem having a cup of tea with him in my office, just to maybe discuss into more details my budget speech, and I'll be able to break it down. But then, on issues that are raised by Eddie, Senator Eddie, through the Speaker, our revenue performance has been underperforming. Revenue collection has been underperforming. And every year we are reporting shortfall in revenue collection. As a matter of fact, there was a time this country was collecting 18% of its GDP as revenue. Today we are collecting just well over 14.5%, around 14.5% of GDP as ordinary revenue. And that is even below the two. We have a feeling we can collect up to 20 or 22% of GDP. However, there are a number of reasons. One of them is the inefficiency and of the systems that are deployed by Kenya Revenue Authority, which we are working on, and we have allocated quite a bit of resources, 17 billion in the supplementary budget that was passed by the National Assembly, supplementary budget number 1, to be able to revamp and re-engineer their systems. A lot of reforms are taking place, and we are already seeing some reported progress in terms of personal income tax. But also, it must be understood that a lot of businesses are becoming more and more informal, and collecting taxes from the informal sector is not easy. And a lot of businesses are going digital, and again, collecting taxes in that space is not easy. But we are trying to keep pace with that. So that is creating a bit of a strain on our fiscals. And, but we are still working very hard to manage. In terms of crowding out private sector, we are being very careful not to crowd out private sector. Again, I want to also point out that our capital market is fairly developed. I think that is one thing that has not been appreciated. Kenya has one of the most developed financial sector and capital sector. And the challenge that private sector has been facing in terms of accessing credit is not entirely on availability of funds. It is informed by a number of reasons. And we have seen, in fact, before this war in the Middle East, the private sector had picked up in terms of credit uptake from the banks. There was a time last year, there was a negative growth of 2.7%. It had picked up to well over 6%. In fact, the latest was 9.3%, if I can recollect. Growth in private sector uptake, and that clearly you could see, even in the economy. Much as people have been talking about the demand, the purchasing power is coming down. The truth is, before this war in the Middle East, the PMI, the Purchasers Managers Index, which measures the ability of demand in the economy and people's purchasing power and how we are buying goods, was rising steadily. And it was not us reporting, but by independent evaluators. So, again, we were hit. But again, I want to just say that we are being careful not to crowd out private sector. But again, external borrowing has also its risks. Look at what happened in 2024. Because of the depreciation of the shilling, we added to our debt stock almost 1 trillion shillings without taking even a single penny as a loan. And those are the things that we want to also try to avoid. On issue that has been raised by Senator Sifuna, I don't want to go into other details, but just to focus on the issue of cost of energy. What we have said here is that the government has prioritized stabilization in electricity supply. Before you go to the costs, the first thing is to guarantee supply, because if there is no supply, the cost will definitely be high. You cannot have cost coming down. The basic principle of microeconomics, the demand and supply, the equilibrium of prices, Senator Sifuna. The equilibrium of prices simply means where the supply curve and the demand curve intersect. And so when the demand rises and supply comes down, prices will automatically go up, because that intersection point will be high. But you must guarantee supply. Then the cost. How do we guarantee the cost, and what interventions has the government taken? One of the reasons why we have National Infrastructure Fund, Mr. Speaker, is because we want to implement resources towards generating more energy. Our energy requirement in this country is almost 10,000 megawatts. But we are only generating, well, slightly over 3,000, almost a third. So we therefore need to put more resources to generate more energy. It will deal with the twin issues of supply and cost at the same time, because demand will relatively remain constant. Or even if demand is going to adjust, it's going to adjust slightly. This morning, I had an engagement, a meeting with my counterpart in the energy, the Ministry of Energy, where we were discussing the nuclear power in Siaya, which is likely to generate well over 2,000 megawatts. And that is a project that we want to pursue to bring more power into the grid, because that is the only way through which we can guarantee cost of power to be low. I agree it is high, and also the supply and the reliability of the power. Because again, if you go to many parts of this country, the reliability of power is a challenge. Now, on the question of Nairobi being prioritized, and I want to again say, Mr. Speaker, Nairobi produces almost 60% of the GDP of this country. And that is not a place you can ignore. That's a place that we must invest in terms of providing energy. On Senator Onyonka, I know it has been reported that JKIA is going to cost about 2.9 billion, figures flying around. I saw 2.9 billion US dollars. The figure that I know is half of that, 1.2. And so you don't rely on figures that are flying around, and especially in some print media, some specific newspapers, because of course some newspapers for 3 years now, their headline are always consistent and predictable. So we don't worry much about those ones, because they have also a responsibility to inform or misinform Kenyans. But that, I will tell you, is not going to put any strain on our sovereign debt. And if you want the information about that, either my counterparts at the transport can provide that information, or the government, even through me, can provide that information. But this is one of the candidates for the National Infrastructure Fund. And I will tell you that there will be no sovereign debt as at now that would be put here. On Senator Wambua, what have we been using to link debt to development? Senator Wambua, I don't know whether he has left, but is here. Maybe I thought your height was, I thought you had no, let me reserve that. I couldn't see you. Maybe the problem is my height or your height, but anyway, either of the two. Now, Mr. Speaker, imagine what Senator Wambua is saying. Imagine from independence we didn't have it. Now we are implementing it. I think that is something you should praise this government for. We are doing exactly that. It has not been there. So we are doing it. Because we can't continue complaining. Senator Cherargei, I want to persuade ourselves from just comparing the absolute numbers of debts.
Senator Wambua, I did guide the House that I will only take intervention once he has completed answering all the questions. Proceed, Cabinet Secretary.
Yeah, so on Senator Cherargei, sorry, my brother, I wanted to persuade ourselves from comparing absolute numbers. Actually, the best way to measure debts is to look at the debt sustainability through what we call the present value of debt to GDP. That is what the capacity of debt, a country in paying, or sovereign in paying its debt. Look, if you look at the debt, the American, the US government, the debt they have, it's mind-boggling, but they are able to deal with it because it's a bigger economy. Our debt as a country, you can't compare to another neighboring country. I don't want to mention names. It may be a diplomatic issue. But the bottom line is this. When you talk of 1.8 trillion debt when Kibaki left office, it should be understood that Kibaki left a low-income economy where we were borrowing money under concessional terms. Kenya has graduated to a middle-income economy. You can no longer borrow under concessional terms like it used to happen during Kibaki government. Yes, President Uhuru left about 9 trillion in terms of debts. So that is in the 10 years that it worked. But you should understand that debt, look at it in terms of the value of the shilling then. If you were to subject the debt in terms of US dollars and you apply the exchange rate today, you may find that President Uhuru Kenyatta left debt which was not 9 trillion. It could even be 11 trillion to date because of the current exchange rate. So that is why when I see professionals trying to compare in terms of absolute numbers, I ask myself, really, did we go through the same schools or not? But I want to be very careful there and say that yes, President Uhuru left, or his administration left about 9 trillion shillings if you converted it into shillings in terms of debt, both domestic and external, and now it is 12.8 trillion. And by the way, some of these debt service costs is as a result of some expensive debts that were taken before that we are servicing today. But again, even this government, there will be a government which will come in, which will service their debt. So it is not an excuse for government to say that because another government took up debts that we cannot pay. We have to. I saw another presidential candidate talking of we should not pay debts. I wonder how he would manage a country which has defaulted in debt. You can't. I mean, it's basic knowledge. Unless you want to manage chaos. So I'm wondering whether some of us who are talking of leading this country, they are really prepared in terms of understanding the economy. But I will tell you for a fact that debt is a concern. We have dealt with one issue of debt. When I came into this office, and it was worse when President Ruto came in, the question was not even about debt the debt stock, the debt cost. It was about debt sustainability and whether we were going to be able to pay our debts. I have repeated this severally, Mr. Speaker, that in 2021, IMF had classified Kenya among 5 other countries for default. And we have survived it. So that is the first step. Now the next step is to manage the debt. And I want to conclude by saying, let no one lie to Kenyans that we will be reducing our debt stock. What we can reduce is debt to GDP ratio, which is now at 69, but it is 66 in present value terms. We should go to 55% in present value terms. Once we go to 55% of present value terms, debt becomes sustainable. There is no country in the world which will reduce its debt stock. Let no one cheat you. Anyone who speaks that, Mr. Speaker, is ignorant of economic matters. Thank you.